in. We'll give it a few more minutes as everyone starts to join us, but I might just take the opportunity while I've got a bit of an audience to plug some of the upcoming ECR events. So through Monash Central, there's an upcoming webinar on getting social media savvy. So that's happening on Friday, the 21st of August from 12 to 1 p.m. And it includes a number of presenters, including our own Associate Professor Francine Marquez. So that should be quite an interesting one. If you're keen on learning more about getting involved in social media to share your research and that kind of thing, I'm going to pop a link in the chat. That is for the social media webinar. If you'd like to find out a little bit more about that, feel free to go and have a click on that link. Couple of events that are coming up in science as well. We've got our DECRA workshop coming soon. So that's scheduled for the 17th and 21st of August, and we'll send out some more information on that very soon. So that's going to cover what is a DECRA, writing a DECRA, and there'll also be a workshop for working on the front page of that application. So more information about that coming soon. We've also got the faculty mentoring program beginning again soon. So an email went out about that one last week calling for applications. So this is a great opportunity to meet and get to know and learn from some of the more senior staff in the faculty. And this year we're offering both traditional one-on-one mentoring where you get paired with a mentor and you meet up with them regularly over the next year. But we're also offering this time, we're calling it Random Acts of Coffee, where you get to meet up with a different mentor each time. So this is just to expose you to a variety of different mentors and a variety of different people in the faculty as well. And so I've got a link also for that one that I'm going to pop up just quickly for you in the chat. So that is the application form for the mentoring program. So I really encourage you to get involved with that. If you've done it before or if you haven't done it before, it is a great opportunity for all of us as ECRs. So with that, it looks like we've got quite a few people who have joined us now. So we'll go ahead and get started. So I'd just like to say welcome everybody to this COVID communications session. This time in particular, we are joined by our Dean, Professor Jordan Nash, as well as Professor Craig White, our Associate Dean of Research. So thank you to both of you for giving us your time today. We really appreciate it. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. If everyone could please keep their cameras and audio turned off throughout. Thank you to everyone who has sent questions in advance. It looks like it's going to be a really interesting discussion today. If you do have questions throughout, please feel free to send them through the chat function and we'll do a question and answer session at the end. You're also welcome to send those to me privately in the chat if you prefer to remain anonymous with your question. And then at the end of the session, I'll read out all of the questions that have come through and we'll have a bit of time for Craig and Jordan to answer those questions as well. And just to note that the session is being recorded and it will be made available on the Orbit and also on the Science ECR's workplace group. So jump on there if you are not already part of it. So thanks again for your time today, Jordan and Craig. We're really looking forward to this discussion and I'll hand over to you to go through the questions that have been sent through.
Thanks everyone. It's good to see everyone again. It just occurred to me as we're recording these that it would be fun to watch my hair get bigger and bigger as this thing goes on.
You
Jordan,
can cut it actually, but it's...
I don't know if it's going to make it through the weekend. Clippers might be out. Jordan, do you have the questions to hand and do you want to work through them or would you like me to read them out?
I've got them to hand. I don't know how, if you like me to read them and then give my take on them, I'm happy to do so.
Yeah, that would be great. That's usually how I do it.
Okay, so I'll do that. And first of all, look, let me just say, I'm glad to have an opportunity to talk with all of you. I like to come to the ECR meetings when I can, and it is a difficult time for all of us. As I'm sure you're aware, it's created a lot of unusual situations, but I'm really glad that we're able to have at least a Zoom meeting to get together and discuss these issues, which I'm sure you're all very concerned about. And you're not alone. All staff are concerned about the times at the moment, but it's really important for us to keep communication open and for you to be aware of what the situation is as best as we understand it. And so I will do my best to give you answers to questions where I have answers, or let you know where we don't yet know. I think the questions you've asked are all really, they make sense, and they're the sort of questions I would expect you to be asking at this point. So your first one is, you mentioned that ECRs make up a large percentage of staff and the faculty, most on fixed term contracts. There's concerns about contract renewals in light of COVID. Can I speak to the steps that the university is taking to preserve the workforce and any protections for our jobs under the new enterprise agreement changes? So there was, as you're aware, a variation to the enterprise agreement for the university. It doesn't really change the situation for fixed term contracts, for staff on fixed term contracts. The main changes to the agreements involve issues of compensation for staff. And that is, not taking the 2% pay rise for a certain number of months, and not having promotion payments immediately in increments. So all these things are deferred, and that's a matter of saving tens of millions of dollars in the short term to help us through the financial situation. And in case you aren't aware of the financial situation, I may as well say it now because it influences a lot of the questions that come after. The university has a shortfall of revenue of more than $300 million this year, and most likely at least as much next year. And it has used all its cash reserves and used the ability to take loans and used the reduction in expenses that aren't involved in salaries to try to cover most of that, but it can't cover all of it. And so there was a reduction in staff positions required, and that has been reduced from something over 400 positions to 277, I think is the final number. And that was as a result of the enterprise bargaining agreement, which reduces the cost that we'll have to spend on payroll by not paying these extra increments and paying the 2% over the size of the workforce. That adds up enough to save a few hundred jobs by doing that. So that was a collective act by this staff to reduce the salary bill to enable us to keep more positions active. So now the question is, what do we do about fixed term staff and early career researchers, and how are the protections changing? So the thing that has changed, the main fundamental thing that has changed is that the enterprise bargaining agreement has been varied so that if we find there are areas where, as a result of our reduced number of students, or we have less work in a given area, we can reduce the number of staff in that area. So that's what the university is now looking at. What areas we can potentially have less work because we have less students, or we can do some things that we did, some administrative tasks more efficiently, or other things where we have an opportunity to reduce the work. There will be some academic positions that will be lost in this, but it's not yet clear exactly where those will fall. But again, it's being looked at where we won't be teaching certain subjects potentially, or we may leave some discipline areas as one possibility for those sort of things. So that's the main place in which jobs which are can be fixed term or continuing would be at risk, and it needs to be associated with a stopping to do some certain activities. The other place is that the university still has a significant savings to take every year. During this year, we've already taken a 12% reduction in the budget of the faculty. All faculties have done that, and that will continue through next year. And that means that it's affecting not so much staff who are on externally funded contracts, so people who are on ARC money or NHMRC money. That money is there, and contracts won't be affected. We will honor those contracts, and if new contracts need to be issued on that external money, that will happen. The main place where we are constrained is on what we call operational money, and that's money where we fund researchers from the faculty, and that is something where there's not external money, but we say, well, we may give extra funding for this person out of the money that used to be available to the faculty. So that has been squeezed much more. So staff who are on what is called operational funding, and that there are a wide variety of people, some in teaching positions, some in research positions, some in professional positions, on fixed term contracts, that those contracts we have to look very carefully whether we are capable of renewing them. It's a situation is the work on that absolutely essential for what we are doing? And so we have to have a discussion for every single contract of that nature, which is what fixed term contracts that the faculty is paying for. So that is the process is we really need, with the head of school and the school managers and myself and the human resources people, look through every single position and look what the work is and look whether it's essential to what we're doing and whether we can afford it within the budget we now have. So there will be, and there have been some contracts we've been unable to extend that are fixed term because of that, where they were sometimes the various conditions that were we given for, some of it was things we were doing that Craig was overlooking, so incentive funds to create new research projects. We simply have to stop those this year because there's no discretionary funding allowed to us. So it's money that we really like to spend to keep things active, to stimulate activity. But in this situation, if it's a choice between reducing jobs of people who are here or have been here for some time, or creating new positions to incentivize new research, we have a clear answer to that. But as I say, it's not all fixed term contracts will be stopped. We examine each one individually. And I recognize it's a time of uncertainty for every person on a fixed term contract. And there's also uncertainty for those on continuing contracts right now. But we are trying very hard to, we've been trying very hard to constrain the budgets on everything we spend to remove the least amount of staff that we can and to keep as much activity going as we can. It's a very difficult situation for all the heads of school and all the supervisors to have to make hard choices, and they're all doing it very, very diligently and fighting very hard to justify why we should be spending the budget on various activities and staff members. So I can't, I wish I could say that I'll protect every single fixed term contract that we were sponsoring in the faculty. It's just not possible. We will, but we will examine each of them rigorously to determine how we move those contracts forward. And we will try to give you as much notice to everyone as we can about what the situations are. Okay. Question 2 was, now that the vote has come through and the changes are going ahead, I think I pretty much covered that, just in kind of talking too much about number 1. And number 3 was the university has said there are about 277 jobs lost as a result. What is likely to be the true loss once contract non-renewals are taken into account, and will all faculties and schools be impacted equally? So the equal, it's, as I say, in terms of the 277 jobs, that's where we have reduction of work. So not every place will be affected equally. That we will know once we've examined all the areas. There will be in addition to the 277 positions which are lost, there will be some fixed-term contracts which are not renewed, and we don't have a full scale of that yet. All I can say is that we have been operating under that budget this year, that 12% reduction budget, and it's likely we will continue under that next year. So the kind of climate of what gets renewed and doesn't may well be similar next year, and I can't yet say, but it's for sure there will be fixed-term contracts not renewed next year. I can't pretend that's not the case. So the question 4 is, what is the process for renewing fixed-term contracts coming to an end, and what are the criteria for getting a contract renewed? So I'll just repeat again. Every single contract in the entire faculty is being reviewed by the faculty general manager, myself, the HR business partner, the head of school, and the school general manager. And we do it a couple of months before the contracts are up. And in fact, we've looked ahead 6 months to think about every case that's coming, to work about what possibilities are, so we know where there may be issues. And then the schools are then working to understand what they can afford within their budgets, how many positions, and then also to look at how essential the work is, either for a research program or for a teaching program. And they're having to set some priorities in some cases, but that's the process by which we discuss them and agree which contracts we're able to extend. Number 5 is, what are the implications of a recent shift to stage 4 restrictions about how we go about teaching and research? I'm going to let Craig answer that one, since he's been doing nothing but obsessing over getting permits for everyone for the last 48 hours. So why don't you handle that?
No worries. So some of it I can comment on at this point, and some of it has just maybe changed a little bit in the last few minutes, and that's why I was on the phone, if anyone came in a little bit early. So what we've been doing in the last few days is dealing with the issue of everyone who comes to, every staff member who comes to campus requires a worker permit. And so we've gone through a process, all the people who need to be on campus get the permits. So as of about this morning, they were issued for all of the priority staff who needed to be on campus before Monday. And we're now starting to work through the full list of staff who will need to be on campus during the next, anticipated to be 5.5 weeks or so of stage 4 restrictions. So the implication is that there's the overarching idea of the stage 4 restrictions is that movement is reduced. And so we're limiting access to campus to those people who need to be on campus rather than those who don't. So we're taking some decisions about who it is needs to access campus, and we're issuing permits for them. The little bit that's changed has been the way that students are dealt with under this process. And I don't think I can say anything about that right now, because the email arrived with me just before I came on here, and I was talking to the Associate Dean Graduate Research, what are we now, 18 minutes ago, about the implications of that, and we'll work through it a little bit later today. The overall idea is that we will be only doing the work that needs to be done, so that the people who don't need to move around are not moving around. What it doesn't change is for those people who are working from home, they should continue to work from home. We don't want people coming in to sit in their offices unnecessarily, because we want to make our contribution to the community and not have individuals moved around. So that's pretty much where we're at. The last thing I'll add is that it's going to be frustrating through this initial phase in terms of people getting permits in the timescale that they would like. But I would just point out that our HR folk across the university have been working extraordinarily hard. On the first day, they were up till 4 a.m. issuing hundreds and hundreds of permits for people that needed to be in immediately. So it's a really difficult, time-consuming job, and they're doing an amazing amount of work to do it quickly. So if you can be patient, please do. And that's pretty much where we're at.
Okay, thanks, Craig. Question 6 were, what are the implications for science from the changes in government contributions to undergraduate degrees? You're going to get me angry with a question like that. so the government made this bold statement that they wanted to drive people into STEM. And then you read the fine print, and what it said was, but we're going to fund the students. The student contribution will go down, but so will the government contribution. And the net funding to science is down by 14% or 17% or something ridiculous. So the funding per student in science is going down, and the government says they want students to go into science. Anyway, I wish I could tell you what the implications were, because the university has to work through that. And largely, this is an issue for the university to decide how internally it wants to distribute the funding it gets for students. There doesn't have to be a one-to-one mapping between students who go into arts or students who go into medicine and where the funding goes, because we get a total pool of funding that has a student contribution and a Commonwealth contribution, and then some international students. So the university has some flexibility about, we could let arts take an infinite number of students because it costs actually less than the net amount you get. But overall, there's a problem in that the government is reducing funding and asking us to do more. And that's something, again, the university is really trying to figure out how we can do that. You will may or may not be aware, but the university has for a long time used funding which came from student revenue to help subsidize research. And that is something that was, we were the beneficiaries of in science. And we're trying hard to make the government see that research should be properly funded if you want to do that. And don't ask us to go out and get more students to cover doing world-class research. If you want world-class research done in Australia, paid for by the government, then pay for it. And so that's an argument that's going on. I can't say where it's going to go. I don't have a crystal ball about what's going to happen. I do know that the university wants to come out of this pandemic fit to continue in the mission of excellence in which we were on. And so we want to be in a shape where we, yes, there's an effect of the global pandemic, which every university is suffering, but we want to make sure that we are continuing the strength and excellence of our work and our research and our teaching. And so we're looking as to how we can reshape the way we do the finances for teaching science and doing science research. And that's going to be a work for the next year or so, at least. And that includes how many students you take in each discipline and all these sorts of things, which we're just starting to work on now. It's a really complex model, a really complex problem to try to figure out what's the best way forward. And we have, none of us can really understand what is the best strategy for where to put the students and the student revenue at first. So I think, some of this will be done by experimental method rather than theoretical, which means we will run with students next year, probably very similar to what we did this year, and see how the system reacts, and then probably take a more strategic decision going forward, because we have a very short time scale to deal with the first year that comes in. So that's a really great question, which is in the back of all our minds, and just one of the interesting puzzles that have been dumped on universities this year by the government, which has not been terribly forthcoming with revenue to help us through the pandemic, nor to help us come out of it yet. So we can, we are lobbying government to kind of see how important an engine for the economy of the future universities are, and particularly the STEM part of universities, how important it can be for the economies and the workforce of the future. And there are some in government who get that and some who don't. But it's something that we keep pushing that message, and I hope that we will get it across, because I do believe that the people we educate in science make really very valuable contributions to the growth of the economy, and the rest of the world has pretty much twigged this and invest heavily in science and R&D and see a corresponding growth in their GDP and innovation. So I think we should keep pushing, but I don't have an answer of how the next year or two is going to Finally, question 7. Some people have money in accounts left over from internal funding schemes. Can this money be spent on something different to what was originally planned? For example, if it was originally for conference travel. So this is a bit complicated. So in principle, yes, that money is what we call operational money. So we can do what we want with it. We don't have any government telling us we can't spend it here or there, except you're going to have a head of school telling you don't spend it at all. And the reason for that is that the schools and the faculty, what the university did when it responded to the crisis was to cut, to give everyone a maximum amount of faculty could spend. And that was done to set so that the university could understand how much money it would need to lay out and then where its kind of global position on finance would be. And that didn't pay attention to what kind of revenues we got in or anything else, but essentially we've been given a hard pile of dollars that we can spend, and when those are done, they're done. So the only discretionary funds we have, we have relatively limited discretionary funds. So we cut things like travel dramatically, as you'd expect. But we've also, anything that comes out of these operational accounts counts against that spending. So any of that spending that we can delay until the future years where we will have more flexibility is what we're trying to do. Because if we spend that money now, it often comes at the cost of having to cut something else, which may be a sessional or a fixed term contract, because there's only so much cash in the pot. And I think everyone is prioritizing the staff as much as they can and trying to get the teaching done, because that's really top priority. And being able to spend, so it's really unfortunate. It's why you will be having under pressure from heads of school to not spend down on these accounts, because it does then limit how we can spend elsewhere. And it's a really unfortunate consequence of the huge financial shock of the pandemic, but it's one we are essentially forced to work with. And the amount of money we had to take out of the faculty was so large that, we took, you will have seen that, for instance, the kind of sessional workforce we use for teaching has been slashed really dramatically. Now, some of that makes sense because there's no students on campus, but it's been even harder than we would have normally done, and we're asking staff to pick up a lot of that workload. And travel and running expenses of labs have been reduced dramatically. So, in fact, everything that we spent everything on, every area where we've been looking at incredibly closely to save essentially every penny we can to preserve for the staff. So it's a bit of a long answer, but we'd kind of prefer you not to spend on those accounts if at all possible. And that's again, it's not something we're really delighted to say, because we put, if you mentioned the Advancing Women Scheme, that's something we put in there specifically to help and to make an opportunity. And so it feels really terrible to take that opportunity away, but we're trading a lot of bad choices, unfortunately. So we have to kind of choose the lesser of multiple evils in this environment. It's not a situation any of us really would like to be in, but we're trying to do the outcome we want to get for the faculty and for everyone associated with it is to try to get through this in as strong a shape as possible, and to try to keep our staff as intact as we can. And that was your 7 questions, which we got in under a half an hour, so it gives us time for more questions, I guess.
Right, great. Thank you, Jordan, for answering those questions as honestly and frankly as you can. We really appreciate getting that information coming through to us all. There have been a couple more questions that have come through in the chat, so I'll read them out. The first one is, if external grant funding is one for people on current fixed term contracts, then this comes with a burden for the university of salary overheads. Are there ideas about what the university plans to do with grant funding, given that it comes along with these overheads, and have the overheads reduced at all now that people are working from home?
So overheads are a reflection of the true cost of having somebody working at the university. And although the university's costs have changed at some level, I mean, we haven't, we don't get any break on the overheads really. But I think it's the cost of, if somebody's on an external grant, if there really is an external grant, it's not the overheads that are going to be the issue, the internal overheads. That should be mostly covered. There are some bits of it that aren't, but those are, we accept that we'll cover the last remaining bit typically. So I'm not sure I entirely understand the sense of the question, but generally if external money is coming in to cover a staff position, then those positions will be, we will renew those contracts or create those contracts as necessary. So one thing that's changed is if we offer any new position, it must be offered to anyone who's at the university currently before it can be offered outside. So that offers any member of staff some period to apply for any new position across the university before they're advertised outside.
Okay, great. So it sounds like the university will continue to support anyone who is receiving that external grant money.
If it's external money to support a contract, yes.
Yeah, great.
As long as it's not, well, if it's like below some fraction, so if you were like in a post that was 30% ARC and 70% operational, then that's not so easy. But if it's largely supported by external money, yes.
Great. Another question that came through is, can you comment on the reported job losses at other universities and what this means for the university sector in Australia?
I just read the newspaper like you, and what we read is that there's probably twice as big the job cuts at Melbourne, at UNSW. We haven't heard from some of the other universities. So I think the Vice Chancellor has done a really good job of striking this bargain with the NTU to help spread the burden across the entire staff. And I was really proud of the staff for taking a vote which cost them all something in order to reduce the burden on the staff as a whole, because people could selfishly say not for me, and then we'll have more job losses. So the fact that we're holding the job numbers down to 277 positions lost it's still 7% of the workforce or something, but it's less than we see in some comparable institutions. And remind you that the university has a revenue shortfall of more than $300 million a year, it's really stunning. So it's a testament to the good financial management of the university in the past, and the ability to plan and work extremely hard to keep students here. And in fact, all the staff who've been doing online teaching and making it something that students actually still want to do and find really valuable, that's been incredibly important at saving jobs. So far, I can't comment how other universities have run themselves. I can see that the whole sector has suffered because of the shortfall in revenue, because international students who have been helping, maybe one could say that the lack of national investment in the universities have been making up for that with international students. The loss of that across the sector has been extremely difficult, but I think this university has done a really admirable job of trying to kind of weave the most effective way through this really difficult challenge.
Thanks. We've had another question come through following up from the previous question. So were outstanding grant applications to be successful? Will staff with existing grants be allowed to employ ECRs with that existing money in the interim?
If there's a new grant, which we have a confirmation that it's coming in, it will be the same rules we always have. If there's external money existing, and then we know that there's a new external grant coming, I think, or we have notification of it, then that shouldn't change. So we will see when for instance, the discovery grants get announced at the end of the year. There'll be lots of new positions available associated with those. Many of those will be something we could target at people who are already in positions that may be coming to an end. Some will need new people, but that will be a discussion that we have pretty much as normal next year, because that's external money.
All right, great. Were there any other questions that anyone had that they'd like to send through in the chat? We'll give it a couple of minutes if anybody is thinking of any questions that they'd like to send through.
Just while everyone's thinking, I'll add my standard bit of information, which, remember, if you do have queries, you are welcome to email them directly to me, craig.white@monash.edu, or you can send them via Margaret if you would prefer to do it that way, and I will do my best to answer.
And Craig, are you still looking for ideas from ECRs about how you can help support us with career development and all that sort of thing?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Jordan talked about the scale of things we cut back that we were previously funding through the faculty. We preserved the ECR support as best we were able to. It was the top priority for keeping things going. Great.
So if anyone does have ideas, please send them through to me or straight to Craig as well. That would be great, because we'd love to know how best to support everybody through all of this. There haven't been any more questions come through. So it sounds like all of the questions have been answered, which is wonderful. So thank you so much, Craig and Jordan, particularly for your time today. It's just so beneficial to have this communication with you both, to help all of us ECRs feel connected to the university and have some sense that we know what's going on. So thank you again. We will continue to run these on a monthly basis for now, particularly while things are continuing to change quite rapidly. Craig, if you're happy with that, we can book one in again in about 1 month's time. And just again, thank you, Jordan, for joining us for this special session today. With everything that's been going on recently, it's been really great to have you here to talk to us about everything. Thanks everyone for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your Fridays, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye, thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.